The alarm clock screamed at 6 a.m., and Maya lay frozen beneath her covers, staring at the ceiling she had painted mint green 2 years ago when she still believed things would get better. 27 years old. A degree she never used. A room filled with unworn dresses still bearing their price tags. And a heart that felt heavier each morning than the one before. She pressed her palm against her chest, feeling the hollow echo where her confidence used to live. Somewhere along the way, between the failed relationships, the promotions given to others, the laughter that felt like shards of glass in her throat, she had become a stranger to herself. The woman staring back from her bathroom mirror each morning looked like someone who had given up, even though Maya swore she was still fighting. Was she fighting? Or just surviving? There was a difference, and she knew it. "Good morning, beautiful," she whispered to her reflection, the way her grandmother used to say to her every single day before the old woman passed away. The words landed somewhere in her chest, cold and unfamiliar, like they belonged to someone else's life. The coffee shop on 5th Street had become Maya's sanctuary, not because it offered comfort, but because it offered anonymity. She sat in the same corner booth every day, laptop open to blank documents, fingers hovering over keys she couldn't bring herself to press. She had started a novel 3 times. Each attempt ended the same way, a blinking cursor mocking her inadequacy, a page of half-formed sentences that sounded nothing like the stories in her head. "You've always been too hard on yourself," her mother would say during their Sunday calls, her voice carrying the particular strain of someone who had given the same advice 1,000 times and watched it bounce off armor that only seemed to grow thicker. "I know, Mom," Maya would reply, because what else could she say? How could she explain that the hardness wasn't something she had chosen, but something that had crystallized over years of being told, through silences, through comparisons, through the casual cruelty of people who never meant to be cruel, that she was almost good enough, almost pretty enough, almost smart enough, almost successful enough. Always almost, never quite. The barista, a young woman named Destiny with bright purple hair and a smile that seemed genuinely earned, set down Maya's usual order. "Long day yesterday?" Destiny asked, and Maya almost laughed. Every day was a long day. Every day felt like walking through water, like breathing through a straw, like wearing shoes filled with sand that she could never quite empty. "Something like that," Maya murmured, and Destiny's expression shifted into something softer, something that looked almost like recognition. The breaking point came on a Thursday in late October, when Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her older sister, *, "Just heard about the promotion. So sorry, girl. You deserved it. *. She hadn't even known there was a promotion. She had been so focused on simply making it through each day that she had stopped paying attention to the ladder she was supposed to be climbing. And now everyone else had climbed past her while she stood frozen at the bottom, watching. Maya walked out of her office building at 5:30 p.m. with no destination in mind, her feet carrying her down streets she had never bothered to explore. The city that had been her home for 5 years suddenly felt foreign, filled with faces of people who seemed to know exactly where they were going. What was wrong with her? Why did everyone else seem to have a map for life while she had been fumbling in the dark for years? She found herself in a small park she had never noticed before, nestled between 2 brick buildings like a secret the city had been keeping. An elderly woman sat on a bench nearby, feeding pigeons with an ease that suggested she had been doing this for decades. Maya watched her, transfixed by the way the birds flocked to her without fear, by the gentle way she scattered seeds with wrinkled fingers. "Used to hate pigeons," the woman said without looking up, as though she had sensed Maya's gaze. "Thought they were dirty. Useless. Then one day I realized I was just projecting my own feelings onto them." She finally turned, and her eyes, clear and sharp despite their age, locked onto Maya's. "Sounds silly, doesn't it? But we do that, don't we? We look at something innocent, and we see all the reasons we think we don't deserve it." Maya sat down on the bench beside the stranger, and for the first time in months, she felt something crack open inside her chest. Not the familiar ache of sadness, but something else. Something that had been buried so deep she had forgotten it existed. "My grandmother used to tell me I was beautiful," Maya heard herself say. Every single morning, no matter how bad I felt. She died 3 years ago, and I haven't felt beautiful since. The old woman nodded slowly, as though Maya had told her something profound instead of something obvious. Grief has a way of making us forget the truths that matter most. We bury them with the people who taught them to us, because it hurts too much to hold them without holding onto them. She paused, feeding a particularly bold pigeon that had landed on her knee. But here's what I've learned in 82 years. Those truths don't belong to the people who gave them to us. They belong to us. And we can choose to keep them alive. Maya didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat at her kitchen table with her grandmother's photo, still wearing her Sunday hat, still smiling like she knew a secret, and she let herself remember. Not just the compliments, but the way her grandmother said them. Like they were facts, not flattery. Like beauty was something inherent, not something earned. She thought about all the ways she had been measuring herself against impossible standards, comparing her chapter 1 to everyone else's chapter 20. She thought about the novel she kept failing to write, and she realized that she had been trying to produce a masterpiece before she had even allowed herself to put a single authentic word on the page. The next morning, Maya didn't say, "Good morning, beautiful," to her reflection. Instead, she said something new. "Good morning, Maya. You're not perfect, and that's okay. But you're here. You're trying. And that counts for something." It felt clumsy in her mouth. Insufficient. But she said it again that afternoon when she deleted her novel's opening page for the 10th time. And she said it again that evening when she declined an invitation to go out, choosing instead to sit in her room and actually feel her feelings instead of drowning them in noise. 3 months later, Maya had written exactly 40 pages of her novel. They weren't good pages, not yet, but they were hers. Honest and messy and filled with the kind of vulnerability she had spent her whole life running from. She had also started volunteering at a youth center on Saturdays, teaching writing to teenagers who reminded her of herself at that age, hungry for permission to be imperfect. One evening, as she was locking up the center's building, a young girl named Keisha stopped her at the door. "Ms. Maya," she said, her voice small in the empty hallway. "I read what you wrote. The stuff you shared last week. About feeling like you weren't enough." Keisha swallowed hard, and Maya saw herself in those nervous eyes. "I feel that way too. All the time. But you made it sound like maybe it's not a life sentence." Maya knelt down so she was at Keisha's level, and she smiled, not the forced smile she had practiced for years, but something real and a little crooked. "It's not a sentence, sweetheart. It's a feeling. And feelings change, especially when you stop fighting them and start listening to what they're trying to tell you." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You're going to mess up. You're going to fail. You're going to have days where you look in the mirror and see nothing but flaws. But you're still here. You're still trying. And that makes you extraordinary. If you have watched this far, then something in this story has spoken to you. Maybe you are Maya, waking up each morning feeling like you are drowning in your own skin. Maybe you are Keisha, desperate for someone to tell you that your feelings are valid and that your story is not over. I want you to know that nobody is perfect. That is not a consolation prize, it is simply the truth. Every person you admire, every success story that makes you feel small in comparison, every flawless Instagram feed hiding 1,000 insecurities, they are all imperfect beings doing their best, just like you. Your worth is not determined by your job title, your relationship status, the number on a scale, or the opinions of people who have never taken the time to know your heart. Your worth is inherent. It was there when you took your first breath, and it will be there when you take your last. You do not have to earn it. You simply have to remember it. If this story resonated with you, if you found even a flicker of something familiar in Maya's journey, then I invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Because you deserve to be reminded, every single day, that you matter. That your presence in this world is not accidental. That your struggles are not your identity, but passages toward something greater. And if you are ready to start your own journey, if you are tired of measuring yourself against impossible standards, then I challenge you to do one thing tomorrow. Look in the mirror and say something kind to yourself. Not because you have earned it, but because you have always deserved it. You are not perfect. You are human. And that is more than enough. Subscribe. Like. Share. because someone you love needs to hear this message today.